Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Overcoming Depression and Anxiety, brought to you by Healthy Me Summits. I'm Joanna Rushton, your host, and we're being joined here today by Dr. Fab Mancini. Dr. Fab Mancini is Fox News' healthy living expert, a world-renowned chiropractor, a Hay House best-selling author of The Power of Self-Healing, and host of his popular radio show, Self-Healing with Dr. Fab. He's also the best-selling author of Chicken Soup for the Chiropractic Soul, an internationally acclaimed educator, business leader, and speaker. Dr. Fab, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for making the time to do so.
I'm so excited, Joanne, and thank you for having me. This is a very important subject, and I'm just looking forward to having this discussion with you.
Me too, and you know, one of the things that I absolutely love and adore about your work as a doctor, you are so integrative, and you really have learned how to honor the whole person, the whole being, and really understand what it takes to heal a whole person, and understanding the mind-body connection, and understanding that we are so much more than just our physical being, and that when we integrate both the body and mind together, that we can really create a platform to access our own intuitive healing potential. And that's, you know, a lot of what I want to talk to you about today, because I know from my own personal journey of healing, I've gone often from specialist to specialist, practitioner to practitioner, who is an absolute expert in their own right, in their own field. But until I actually found somebody who could learn to actually integrate the systems of the body and understand that each system impacts and affects every other system, and therefore to be a specialist in one area is great, but to really understand how to work with someone from a very holistic perspective, that's when I found I got my greatest results. So I'm really wanting to share that with our audience today. So I guess my first question comes from this amazing best-selling book that you have, that has been published by Hay House, The Power of Self-Healing. And within that, you have 3 steps or 3 approaches to being able to activate this innate wisdom we have within inside ourselves. Can you share a little bit more about that with us, Dr. Fab?
You know, the journey really began for me as I was going through pre-medicine, and I began to recognize that I was learning a lot of basic science courses, and really learning about the body and the body's ability to heal, and the systems and the organs that really are the ones that set the function of the body. But then I also began to take a lot of psychology courses, and then I started taking theology courses and philosophy courses, and I started realizing that there was a lot more to this healing than physical. And that's what began that journey. And then I ended up in the hospital after a car accident, and the orthopedic surgeon in the hospital said I should go see a chiropractor. And that changed my life course, because that's when I discovered that there was so much more that I was being taught in traditional, regular pre-medicine or medical school. So that's when I really began to search, what is it that the body can do naturally? And after 25 years of practice and thousands of patients that I've helped, one thing that I can tell you is that the body heals in 3 levels. I call it the 3-legged stool. The first one is on a physical level, on an emotional level, and on a spiritual level. And when I wrote this book, I never forget this is my 4th book, and my literary agent says, well, what is the one message that you want to give to the world? And I said, well, if there was one message, that is to be able to shift the paradigm in how people view their health, because we're so used to and conditioned to view health from the outside in rather than the inside out, and to be able to mostly manage symptoms rather than to get to the root cause of the problem. And when I began to recognize that what was healing patients today, that were not frustrated when traditional medicine was failing, they were the patients that were actually seeking out new technologies, new science that was really evolving in the last 25 years, and they were getting well. So physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that's really the message that I wanted to bring, and primarily give people an opportunity to recognize that the power is the power of choice. that is to make today that are either making us sick or making us well.
And it's such a message that you know, our audience, especially given we've decided to focus our first summit on overcoming depression and anxiety, and you know, choice in that state when we feel stuck and when people are suffering from either depression or anxiety, it's often choice that they feel they don't have. And you know, this is the one light bulb moment that when they, you know, turn on that light bulb to realize that they do have choice, that they can actively participate in their own healing process, even during those deep, dark moments where they're feeling stuck and that there is no way out. It's a very empowering message to be able to give people. And one of the things I really wanted to also ask you was, in 25 years of, you know, being a doctor and working with your patients, have you started to see a pattern in either behavior or in belief systems that you would, you know, see as an underlying cause to a lot of the depression and anxiety that you see?
Yes, and it's interesting because, you know, I recently did a breaking news for Fox News talking about primarily depression. And in America, we have over 25% of the population that's claiming that they're depressed. The interesting thing is that we're seeing a large amount of numbers in children being depressed. And there's, for the first time, challenges in which medical doctors are actually disagreeing because the over-medication on children when it comes to depression and even anxiety. So one of the patterns that I'm seeing is that people are recognizing that these are just symptoms, and symptoms are really the alarm system of the body. It's not a negative thing. It's just the body's way of letting us know that there's something else going on, that there's a deeper cause. So the one thing that we have been very effective in having people ask themselves the question, is there something in my life right now that could be contributing to this symptom? Let's call it depression or anxiety. There's something going on that I have control over. You know, I often tell my patients that circumstances in our life, like a loss of a job, a loss of a loved one, a breakup in a relationship, financial difficulties, they don't define us. What defines us is our responses. So I usually tell them that how I define the word responsibility is our ability to respond, right? Our ability to respond in a constructive way. That means that the things that are happening to us, they're not the things that are really the things that we need to blame. What we need to really pay attention to is, how am I responding to them? And is there a way that I can respond in a way that instead of making me sick, can actually empower me and make me healthy and make me happy and make me well?
So, Dr. Fab, that's a beautiful segue into the next question I have around emotions and what research has shown us what type of emotions can actually provide a healing process or facilitate a healing process in depression and anxiety.
You know, that's a great question. And Joanne, one of the things that we've learned through science is the fact that emotions turn into chemistry. And most of the time, we don't recognize the fact that our emotional state is really having a lot to do with how we feel. And anxiety and depression are mostly feelings. And when you get down to it, a lot of times it's the fact that you can dwell on a problem so much to the point that you can change your own chemistry, and that gets you into a depressive state. At the same time, you can use the opposite emotions that can allow you to create a healthy chemistry, such as serotonin and norepinephrine and oxytocin. I mean, all these beautiful chemistries that are the highs of the way when we feel happy and when we're at our highest point of performance and well-being. So there were three particular emotions that we have seen in the science over the last few years that have really shown us that the ways to switch that chemistry into a more of a positive chemistry. And whether you have depression or anxiety, one of the things that we have found is if you have a lack of ability to forgive, because forgiveness has shown that it changes our chemistry and it releases all that negative chemistry that's turning into this anxiety and depressive symptoms. And one of the things that we learned is that when we evaluate our patients, we need to really pay attention to, could they have been an experience, a trauma that we underwent early in our lives? Maybe perhaps our parents did not approve of us or supported us. Maybe there was physical or emotional abuse growing up. Maybe we were heartbroken when we were 16 years old from that boy that promised us the world, but then left us after a week of dating. I mean, there's so many examples of that. And when we address those and we allow and encourage the patient to really use great forgiveness techniques, such as just identifying the problem, the person, and whether you go in front of them or not, and just close your eyes and mentally say, I forgive you, and just be able to go through that process, we notice that our chemistry changes and our state and those symptoms of depression and anxiety seem to be lifted away. The second one, and it's really important, and this is beautiful, is called gratitude. You know, if we can just be a little bit more grateful for what we have. You see, the challenge that I find is that either most people are in a depressive or anxiety state, whether they are dwelling in the past or whether they are thinking too much about the future. You see, depression has been associated with all of us dwelling too much into the past, worrying too much about what happened, what didn't happen, the mistakes that I made. I wish I wouldn't have done this. Why did I take that job? I should have known better. I should have never cheated. I mean, these are all things that happen for a purpose, and embrace it because they're lessons in disguise. And then the anxiety is when we're not being grateful enough. Because you see, when we're waiting to be happy, just when something happens, you know, when I find that perfect man, when I get that perfect job, when I have the car that I always dreamed about, when I get those shoes and that purse that I really feel good about, that's really what people are waiting for, instead of appreciating that, you know what, right now, you may not have a fancy place, but you have a roof over your head. Talk to any homeless out there and you can appreciate your home no matter how bad it is. And if you don't have a car, talk to somebody that has to take public transportation every day, and you can begin to appreciate your beat up car a little bit more. So let's be grateful. Let's start a gratitude journal. Let's tell the people around us that we appreciate them. Let's make sure that we don't take anything or anyone for granted in our inner circle. And the last one is my favorite, Joanne, and that is love. We have found that when we truly love, especially oneself, especially unconditionally, then those feelings of depression and anxiety seem to just dissipate away. Because that unconditional love is the kind of love that I never forget Louis Hay talking about waking up in the morning, and instead of looking at yourself in the mirror and looking at all the imperfections, why don't you just look at yourself and say, I love you. I love you. Because you may be the only person saying that to you that day, maybe that week, maybe even that month. But self-love is what really begins that healing process, because that's when we become hopeful. That's when we become more aware of how valuable we really are to this world, to ourselves, to our families. And when we self-love, when we are a little bit more patient and kind with ourselves, instead of this internal talk that we're beating ourselves up every single day for the mistakes that we make, that's the three emotions that we have found can really help you. So I want you to right now be able to identify anyone in your life that you need to forgive, and forgive them. Begin to recognize and be grateful for everything and everyone in your life. And lastly, begin to love yourself a little bit more so you can love other people in your life a little bit more.
And I don't know anybody who wouldn't benefit from taking all three of those emotions and working to embrace them and embody them more in their lives on an everyday basis. It's so very important. And I also want to recap on something you said earlier as well, because again, I think that it's a light bulb moment for so many people to understand that what they choose to think and the feelings that that thought creates literally creates the biochemistry in the body that then dictates your experience of either depression or anxiety or joy or sadness or whatever state. And I think that, again, so many people are focused on life happening to them and life doing to them. And often, as we discuss in the victim consciousness, where we tend to place blame on others and situations as being the problem, we have a light bulb moment here to wake up, to realize that through the thoughts that we choose to think and the words we choose to talk to ourselves with, we can literally change our biochemistry to start to facilitate a different experience. And when we incorporate into that forgiveness, love and gratitude, then we can support a healing platform that is so integrative, and everything that you're talking about and encapsulating is just so important to that. And I feel that, and I'm saying this to our audience because it was such a light bulb moment for me to realize that what I think creates my experience. Yes. And I'm the first person to put my hand up and say, yep, I used to live my life by the victim, and it was always happening to me, and I didn't ask for it, and I didn't want it, and it wasn't what I was consciously asking for, until that light bulb moment. And one of those, was quite a light bulb moment with my mother one day, who just got really real with me. And he just, told me, stop being such the victim. And you hear it from somebody you love, and it can be quite an awakening moment. But it changed my life from then, from then on. So the next thing I wanted to ask you is because, and I think that this is really an important question, because what we choose to eat also facilitates our biochemistry. So, when we eat too much sugar, or we, start to buy our energy from caffeine and stimulants because we haven't learned how to really produce our own energy, and then we start literally buying it, paying for it. I know it's a radical concept, but it's true, huh? And so I want us to talk a little bit about nutrition and how we can make healthier nutritional choices that actually also support the biochemistry, just like our thoughts do.
Joanna, I had an interesting experience, and as you asked me that question, I was thinking a few months ago, I have had for the last maybe 25 years sports cars. And I was putting gas, and I never paid attention. But when that flap opened up, I was putting gas, and I got to read that I needed to put the high octane fuel. I needed to put the best fuel possible out of the 3 options that I have in my gas pump. So I'm putting always the nice high fuel, the high octane fuel. And I said to myself, and it just came to me, I wonder that if every time we open our mouth, if a little flap just open up like that, and all it said is more vegetables, right? Maybe more fruits, more organic foods, maybe more wholesome foods, maybe some great supplements to supplement our lives, how healthy will we be? And the challenge is that I realized that even if I put bad gas in that car, I can always trade my car in, right? I usually trade them every 2 to 3 years. But imagine, our bodies is the one thing that you cannot trade. I mean, scientists have told us that we are predicted to live somewhere between 105 to 120 years old, genetically predicted to live. And most of us, as you know, the mortality rate is somewhere between the high 80s or so. And for some men, it's even the high 70s. But one of the things that I can tell you is what you put in your body, what you feed your body has a lot to do with how you feel. And we have seen that from patients to patients. I had a lady right now that I was taking care of, and she had to quit work at 20 years of suffering, tremendous suffering from many different conditions like fibromyalgia, sympathetic reflex syndrome, and many others. And she came to me, and one of the things that we noticed with her is that she had gained over 350 pounds. Part of that was because of the depression, that she was actually craving those high carbs. You see, depression has already been linked to our cravings. So the problem is that when we get into that depressive state, if we feed it, it will multiply and it will become this bigger thing in our lives. But if we do the opposite and we ignore it and we feed the right things, then all of a sudden we notice that that depressive state begins to go away. From a physical state, we notice that if we get depressive, we get our shoulders down and our heads tilted down, and we feel kind of like the world is on top of us. But then if we change the physiology, we notice that immediately it changes the chemistry and the physiology of the body to make us give us a different state of being. So the food is very important. So some of the things that we have noticed is that we got to add more vegetables to our food. Even the fruits right now are being questioned because many of the foods right now have a lot of sugar. And because we already have such a high sugar diet, we're recommending far more nutrients and vegetables. And I tell you something that I've done in my family. We have 2 kids and we've been trying to get them to eat healthy breakfast for a long time. And then I began to do smoothies for my own sake because I usually wake up in the morning, go work out first thing in the morning, and then do a recovery shake. So by the time they get in rest to go to school, I'm making my shake. So I started putting vegetables in it like kale, spinach, apples. I started adding some avocados to the shake. And then I put my protein powders and I put my enzymes and my minerals. And then I made this delicious shake. And they were looking at me and all of a sudden they said, well, Dad, can we try it? And they started really loving it. And I want you to know that I know many of us, unfortunately, are going right after the fast foods because we feel that it's more convenient. But we have noticed that, you know, the sad thing is that many of our grocery stores, 80% or 90% of the foods are processed foods that are not going to give us the nutrients that our body is needing. So therefore, the question is, where do we get those nutrients? And that's when we really have to pay attention to what kind of supplementation are we giving our bodies? Are we adding enough vitamin Bs, you know, because that is going to help us? Are we adding enough antioxidants into our system? Omegas to decrease that inflammation that's been associated with depression and anxiety. See, these are some of the things that will help us make sure that by simply adding more vegetables in our diet, a nice supplemented regimen that can complement what we eat, then all of a sudden we notice that that is a great way to be able to alleviate some of the depressive and anxiety symptoms that we're experiencing.
I think such an important part of everybody's healing process is to make sure that they're making those nutritional choices that support the body, support the mind. And as you say, there's, you know, I often say to my own clients, you know, you choose all of these convenience foods, all these processed foods that are so much more convenient for time and efficiency. But I said, how convenient are they really when they leave you sick, tired, and depressed?
And not only that, but lately in the United States, Harvard University have actually released a study 2 years ago that said that over 65% of Americans had personally bankruptcy because of a health issue. So I want you to know that this lack of proper eating is one of the foundational things associated to most chronic illnesses like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, arthritis, obesity. So if we can imagine that is not only breaking us from the perspective of that is costing us as a company more money every year to get insurance, that is costing us as individuals more money every year to get insurance, but at the same time to recognize that out of all the personal bankruptcies, right, which are usually associated with your business decisions, is not the case. Now the majority of those decisions are your health decisions that are really bankrupting you in your own pocketbook. So don't you think that it would be a great investment for you to invest in yourself, right? Rather than thinking of healthy food as an expense. Because I can tell you right now, even if you go through one of these fast food chains, the food that you're spending is getting more and more expensive. The challenge is that the nutrients in it are getting less and less every single year. So why not just go and be able to make you a great salad? Maybe use some lean protein. You know, depression and anxiety both respond very well to lean protein, like some lean chicken or turkey or something like that that can really help you. And you don't have to have more than 4 or 5 ounces, but just make sure that you implement that into your diet. And all of a sudden you see that that fuel that you're putting into your body is not only helping you run this high performance vehicle, right? Which I call it the greatest miracle that ever lived. Think of yourself as a high performance car, as a Lamborghini or Ferrari or whatever car of your preference, because that's how you need to feed it every single day.
You know, Dr. Fab, there's one thing that I really want to tackle here because, if any of our audience is listening and they do happen to suffer from depression or anxiety and find themselves in periods, because this is the other thing that we know with depression and anxiety is that, it can come over us in waves, and some people can sit in a depressive state for a lot longer than others. Other people will experience anxiety, sometimes for days at a time, others for a few hours. And I guess what I want to be able to say to those that are listening, no matter where they are in that state of what they're experiencing, what are some of the simple little things that I call them, like, rainbow bridges, okay? Because the reality is, when you're stuck in it, when you're in that funk, and you really, it's like they could be listening to us right now and they could just be going, yeah, right, whatever. Just, I'm wanting to listen, I'm wanting to take it on, but you know what? The overwhelmment of the negative thoughts are pulling them back into that, to the polarity of where they really want to be. Do we have to, if we're that person who's experiencing that, are we better off just literally allowing ourselves and coming to a place of acceptance for how we feel right now, and then we wait for that window of opportunity where our emotions just kind of lift a little bit, and we then try to find momentum with that little bit of positive? Or are there actually something that we can do that will lift us out of that negativity? Because there's a real catch-22.
Right. It's a great question. And what comes to my mind first and foremost is, and you said it very well, it's just to embrace the state, to rather than rejecting it or rather than fighting it, just embrace it, just accept it and recognize, you know what, I am a little bit depressed, or lately I've been a little bit more anxious than normal. Those are very normal emotions or very normal behaviors that you can experience from time to time in life, but they're not meant to be chronic. They're not meant to be long-term. When you catch yourself that you've been in that state for days, for weeks, for months, that's when we have to be very careful. So when you start noticing it, just be able to embrace it, take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out, and just say, okay, and begin to filter it through these three lenses that I gave you earlier. The first one is, what could I be doing physically to help me get out of this depressive or anxiety and anxious mode? So some of the things that we have noticed in behaviors that many people have reported over the years, the first one is to be able to, and we discussed some of it, is make sure that you're implementing better foods and making better selections in your foods. Just changing that is going to change the course of that chemistry production in your body, and it's going to start producing some of the healthier chemistry and hormones that are going to get you out of that funk. Because that's what's really happening. It's that you're feeding your own chemistry to the point that it's getting worse and worse, and you go deeper and deeper, or more anxious and more anxious. The second one, and we didn't discuss it too well, and that is the movement, the exercise. So many studies have already shown us that just changing our physical body, just moving, taking a walk, going outside, being able to go for a run, being able to do a high intensity workout for 10 minutes, just get on the treadmill or anything you want to do. Go out for a bike run, swim in the ocean, swim in a pool, go for a hike. Anything like that allows our bodies to move is going to actually produce a lot of the healthy chemicals, especially the endorphins that are going to get you out of that state. It's going to produce the oxytocins that are going to give you that happiness feeling and make you feel better immediately. So make sure that you move. The third one, and this is something that I recommend very highly because, not only as a trained chiropractor, I also got trained in acupuncture and nutrition and many other things. And I can tell you that adding a complementary or holistic provider to your team of doctors is essential for dealing with depression and anxiety. Be able to go visit your local chiropractor that can maybe improve the nerve function of your body so your body can get out of that state of funk. The other one is an acupuncturist. We have seen acupuncture really balancing the energy meridians of the body and be able to help you from an internal basis get out of that funk also. Then a homeopathic doctor. In Europe, we use a lot of homeopath. In the United States and Australia, not as much, but we're noticing that homeopathic is becoming more and more prevalent. And it's definitely always a great alternative to something more pharmaceutical in nature that may have potential side effects. So try that. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, you always have the ability to do that. And then I can tell you that from the 3 emotions that I gave you, I think that making sure that you're constantly forgiving those that have hurt you, moving into the gratitude journal every single day and appreciating those around you every single day, and making sure that you're loving yourself, loving those around you in a way that is unconditional, meaning don't have any expectations on your love, just love for the sake of loving, and you'll see how you'll get out of that funk. And then one area that we didn't get to talk too much about is the area of what can you do from a spiritual basis. And we noticed by many of the research, and even I added a lot of it in my book, is that prayer is definitely one of the best ways to get yourself out of that depression and that anxiety. Meditation has been proven by science over and over again to be able to shift the mindset, the mindfulness of our body, the brainwave of our bodies, and the chemistry of our bodies to be able to get out of that depression and that anxiety, but also being with nature. We notice that that's very, very important. And the other thing that I would tell you is having a purpose for living is one of the greatest things, because knowing your purpose for living. I'll never forget, Joanne, when I was in 1978, I went to a seminar in which the speaker was talking about the importance of having a life mission, a life purpose. And I never really heard of that. I've heard of a purpose statement for your business and a mission statement for your business. So I began to write mine. And what came out in one simple sentence after hours and hours of writing and asking myself the questions, why was I born? What do I love doing more than anything else? Why do most people tell me that I'm really good at? You know, and all those questions that really lead you to what your purpose in life is. Mine came out to one simple thing: to learn to unconditionally love myself so I may unconditionally love others. Because I noticed that when I'm loving myself, every area of my life works. My health works, my spiritual, social, business, everything works because I work, because I'm loving myself enough. So I've chosen to, since 1978, dedicate my life every single day to learn to love myself a little bit more. And the more that I love myself, it gives me this amazing power and willingness to want to love everyone around me, because that's where you develop that compassion, that patience, that caring, that listening skill instead of always talking. And but those are some simple tips that you can do right now that can help you move from and shift you from that state, wherever it is in your life right now, whether it's serious, mild, or medium. Just begin to apply some of these activities, and you'll see that all of a sudden that will get you out of that funk into a better state of being.
Yeah, some brilliant advice there, Dr. Fab. Thank you. And that's exactly what we're wanting to do for our audience and our listeners. And there's a lot of people here that'll be listening that don't necessarily suffer from depression or anxiety, but are perhaps either health coaches or practitioners that are looking for better resources for themselves, or people who have loved ones or friends that are suffering, and they're looking for better ways in which they can support their friends and loved ones going through the process. And when they feel a little bit more equipped with some suggestions and some guidance that they can offer, then it makes them feel better about the role that they can play in that person's life as well. And I think that's really important and empowering for other people to feel that they can actually play a positive role in helping someone else, lift themselves out of that funk.
Recently I had a friend, Joanne, that told me something very interesting. And I've heard it before, but the way he put it kind of really left me an impression. And that is that anytime that we find ourselves depressed or anxious, all we have to do is go help somebody that is going through a worse or more difficult time. Somebody that's more depressive or more anxious than we are. And what happens is that when you get yourself out of your own pettiness, when you get yourself into the mode of helping someone else, immediately helps you. And it begins to get yourself from when you're not overthinking it. See, one of the things that we learn in neuroscience is that when we repeat, I'll give you an example. We have about 60,000 thoughts a day, 60,000. 80% of those thoughts 80% of those thoughts are the same thoughts you had the day before. Can you imagine that? 80% of those thoughts are the same thoughts you had before, and 70% of those thoughts are negative in nature. You see, we keep repeating all this negativity in our minds. Remember that 5% of our brain is conscious, and actually 95% is what we call subconscious. That means that we don't really are aware of what's in that 95%. So what I'm asking you to do is maybe use some affirmations that maybe when you don't feel good, go ahead and say to yourself, I feel great. I feel happy. I feel energetic. And look at yourself in the mirror and put that emotion behind it. You know, another thing that we teach in meditation is one of the things that we notice in something called neuroplasticity. And it's a beautiful new science in neuroscience that is teaching us that when we close our minds and we begin to envision the state of being that we want to be in. So if you find yourself a little bit depressive right now, go ahead and close your mind, close your eyes, take a deep breath in and out, and begin to see yourself in your mind happy. And ask yourself, how would I feel when I'm happy? What would I be doing? How would I come across? What would I be saying to those around me? And begin to play that movie just like if you were living it. And what we notice is that the brain begins to create new pathways and begins to replace the old pathways that had you in a depressive state into new pathways that are actually putting you into that state of happiness. And that's how you begin to reprogram your subconscious mind. So I want you to know there's a lot of hope out there. I don't want you to feel that you're all alone. I mean, you know, this summit, one of the reasons I wanted to be a part of it is because it's going to impact so many people's lives. But all you need is one thing that you can take away from this summit that you can begin to implement in your life on an everyday basis. And remember, it doesn't take 100 things that you're going to change in your life. It just takes 1, 2, or 3 things that actually resonate with you, that you feel that you can commit to, and maybe find some accountability person out there. You know, one of the things that we notice in the studies on depression and anxiety is when you begin to surround yourself with happier people, you get out of that depressive state a lot faster. The problem is when we're in that depressive state, we tend to want to go with the people that are depressed too, because that's familiar, right? That makes us feel comfortable. That makes us feel like we're not the only one. But guess what? Unfortunately, that's not going to get you out of that state. What's going to get you out of that state is to call the happiest friend that you have and say, Wendy, I'm coming over. I need a little bit of Wendy time right now. Or Jack, you know, why don't we go and hang out because I need a little bit of you right now. If you do that, it will make a difference. If you feel yourself anxious, don't surround yourself with other anxious people. Go ahead and find those people that are calm, that are relaxed, that seem to have it all together, that seem to be in a state of balance and peace, because they're the ones that are going to give you the kind of thing that you're looking for right now. And remember, we are adaptive beings. Joanne, one of the most beautiful things in science in all these years is that I always go back to the fact that as human beings, we are adaptive beings. We adapt to the environment around us. Our cells, with the studies of epigenetics, now we know that the environment around the cell is far more important than the genes inside the cell. So if we surround ourselves with an environment that is opposite, meaning it's going to get us into a better state of health, I promise you, by the adaptive law that our human bodies are, you're going to immediately begin to feel better.
I love it. I love it. I could talk to you all day.
Let's keep going. We're going to have this marathon. It's going to be 24 hours with Joanne and Fab right now.
That's it.
About getting yourself out of this depressive and anxious state.
I love it, Dr. Fab. You know what? There's one thing I want to touch on with you being a chiropractor as well as, yes, you know, an amazing healer. Just for our audience that may not think about chiropractic as even a go-to as a modality to actually support the neurological system and central nervous system, can you just explain a little bit more about how regular chiropractic or even just the realignment of the spine can actually support, again, the biochemistry and therefore support the process of managing depression and anxiety?
Well, one of the things that I learned early on in my career, and I was actually going to become a neurosurgeon. I was fascinated with the nervous system. And the nervous system, as many of you know, is your brain, is your spinal cord, and all those nerve branches from your spinal cord that support every single cell, organ, and system in the body. See, what I learned early on, learning physiology, is that of all of our systems, we have multiple systems. We have circulation system, we have our skeletal system, which is our bones. We have our digestive system, we have our pulmonary system, which is our lungs, our cardiovascular system, which is our heart. Well, all of those systems are controlled and regulated by the nervous system. It's the electrical system of the body. It's when the brain tells the body what it needs to do, and the body tells the brain what it needs. And this reflexes going back and forth constantly is what keeps our body in what we call the state of homeostasis, which is a state of balance. So when I became a chiropractor, I chose chiropractic of all the disciplines because it allows you to be able to reset your nervous system from the stressors in our lives. Imagine the fact that you have a circuit breaker in your house and you put too much electricity, you plug too many things into those outlets. And then all of a sudden you find out that in your garage, your circuit breaker went off. Well, that's like your nervous system. Anytime that your nervous system is overloaded with the stresses of a relationship, the toxicity in our system, which is so great, the job, the stresses that we have. Maybe we don't like our boss. Maybe we're in an environment that's very negative. Maybe we're being overworked. When we have relationships in our own house that we feel prisoners, right? All that stress just accumulates in our body. And the father of stress, Hans Selye, in the 1950s, he actually predicted that over 90% of the diseases of the world were being caused by the distress in our lives, by the negative stress in our lives. So chiropractic allows you to align the spine, which affects the nervous system, and then allows you to have that reset button that just resets you. So it boosts your energy. It allows you to feel more relaxed. People claim that it helps their pain and it helps a lot of other things. Well, we have a lot of science behind it. And actually this year we're celebrating 120 years since chiropractic was founded. And it's all over. I mean, all over Australia, you have some of the best chiropractors around the world. And I love them all because they're so passionate about chiropractic. So to me, chiropractic was just a vehicle to be able to empower the individuals to recognize that that's one of the essentials in life, to make sure you have a healthy nervous system. And I find that through chiropractic, it's one of the most practical ways. So you ask me how frequent. Honestly, the frequency depends on the state of life that you live. I live a very high stress life. I have a lot of responsibility. I'm on planes 2 or 3 times a week. I'm constantly participating in many leadership things that are going on around the world. So I've been getting adjusted for the last 27 years, an average of about 2 times a week. And why do I do that? It's because I know that I'm functioning at my highest level. But if something recently happened, I went to a new chiropractor that insisted in doing a full spine x-ray. And then I compared it to when I first started in 1987, my first x-ray that I took when I went to chiropractic school. And I realized that my whole skeletal system had regenerated, where there's no arthritis, the curvatures are perfectly stable, all my discs are perfect, and even though I'm going to be turning 50, my spine today is better than it was 25, 27 years ago, because our body regenerates. And remember, our skeletal system replaces itself every 10 years. So many of our organs are constantly being regenerated. So by having a great nervous system, it just allows us to be at our optimum. So that's one of the things that I love the most about chiropractic. And I'm so glad to see that so many people are benefiting from this science, philosophy, and art.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for just really clarifying the benefits of chiropractic as a modality, because, I think it's a form of aiding the body to come back to that homeostasis that, again, still so many people could be benefiting from. So that's awesome. I think that's given them.
I did my first book. It was Chicken Soup for the Chiropractic Soul. And the reason I wanted to do that book was because I wanted to be able to share what patients were saying that chiropractic was helping them. And I remember Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen calling me and telling me, Fab, there's so many miracles in chiropractic. And I said, The body is the miracle. The chiropractic is only a facilitator for the body to heal. Just like any other profession in healthcare out there, the body is the only thing that heals. All I want you to do, if you're listening right now, is to put your health as a top priority. Make sure that that is the number one priority in your life, because from there, you can support the other areas in your life that are important to you, like your family, like your faith, like your career, like your hobbies, anything else that is important to you. And for me, it's been great because in this last book, I was able to share so many beautiful stories of how people heal through this physical, emotional, and spiritual component, that all of a sudden it gave a lot of hope to people that are really struggling right now. And anxiety and depression were many of those stories. So I hope that you're going to find a tremendous amount of resources and tools where you can benefit from that.
Definitely, absolutely. Dr. Fab, we've got probably time for one more question. And this is a question that probably everyone keeps hearing me ask, because it's something that we're asking all of our speakers. And what we're actually hoping to do with the answers is to compile them into a separate ebook of Healthy Me affirmations. And so what we've been basically asking all of our speakers is that, understanding, as you've explained, neuroscience of today basically tells us that, you know, what we say to ourselves creates the biochemistry and the biology for us to have an experience of that. And so with the power of affirmation, excuse me, with the power of affirmation, what would be your I am statement?
I am designed to be perfectly healthy and be able to live life to my full potential. That would be mine.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom, all the great knowledge and tips, you know, the real takeaways. And that's what I know, that when people tune into summits like this, they really want to know that there's easy to do and easy to apply information that they can take away and put into their life right now. And I really feel that we've been able to offer that to our audience today through our chat. So thank you so much, Dr. Fab. I can't wait for you to come over to Australia. We've definitely got to make some time to meet you in person when you are. And I really look forward to that. And thank you for everything that you do in your life and for your life's purpose, because it really is touching the lives of so many others.
Well, thank you, Joanne. It's been a pleasure, and I've been looking forward. I'm a big fan of yours, and thank you for the opportunity to at least share a little bit of this passion and love that I have for the health of humanity. Because you know what? If you're listening right now, just know this: you're worth it. You're worth it. And that's what we do, because we want you to just be reminded you're worth it. And we want you to love yourself, to be healthy, to be productive, and most importantly, to be happy, because that will decrease the level of anxiety and depression that you may be experiencing right now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Fab. Thank you again for your time and your energy. We love you. You're beautiful.
Thank you. Love you too. See you soon.
See you soon.